Hey everyone, I'm David Weber, broker and operating manager of State Property Management, serving Orlando and the greater Central Florida area. We recently posted a video breaking down where rent prices are trending in 2026, whether they're going up, down, or leveling off in different parts of the market. But today I want to answer a different and very important question. Not can you raise rent based on the market, but are you legally allowed to raise rent in Florida in 2026? There's a lot of confusion out there, especially with national headlines about rent control in other states. So today we'll cover, does Florida have rent control? When can you legally raise rent? How much notice is required? And what mistakes landlords make that get them into trouble? Let's get into it. All right, step one. Does Florida have rent control in 2026? The short answer is no. Florida does not have statewide rent control. That means landlords can generally set rent at market value. However, that does not mean you can raise rent anytime you want or however you want. There are still rules around lease terms, notice requirements, fair housing compliance, and emergency declarations. But as of 2026, there is no statewide cap on rent increases in Florida. Now let's talk about timing, because this is where a lot of landlords make mistakes. There are two major lease types. Number one, fixed-term leases, like a 12-month lease. If your tenant is in the middle of a signed lease, you cannot raise the rent until that lease expires, unless the lease specifically allows adjustments. Number two, month-to-month leases. If the tenant is month-to-month, you can raise rent, but you must provide proper written notice. Florida requires at least 15 days notice before the next rental period for month-to-month tenancies. As a best practice, we often recommend giving more notice than the bare minimum. Now step three, and this is critical. Even though Florida doesn't cap rent increases, fair housing laws still apply. You cannot raise rent selectively based on protected classes. You cannot retaliate because a tenant requested repairs, and you cannot target specific tenants unfairly. Retaliatory rent increases can create legal exposure. So while the state doesn't cap rent amounts, you still must apply increases consistently and legally. Now, before we go further, let me say this. Just because you can raise rent doesn't always mean you should. At State Property Management, we evaluate rent increases based on current market comps, tenant history and payment record, property condition, local supply trends, and long-term strategy. Sometimes raising rent aggressively results in vacancy, and that costs more than the increase would have earned. If you're unsure how to approach a rent increase in 2026, visit www.managecentralfloridaproperty.com and schedule a free consultation. We'll help you look at the numbers objectively. Now let's connect this to the market reality in 2026. In some parts of Central Florida, especially vacation corridors like Davenport and Kissimmee, inventory has increased due to short-term rentals converting to long-term. That means competition is higher. In those areas, raising rent may not be realistic right now. However, lower-priced rentals under $1,800 per month are still performing well. Well-maintained homes and strong school zones are holding steady. Updated properties still command solid renewals. Legal ability and marketability are two different things. Now let's talk numbers. There is no legal percentage cap in Florida, but smart increases typically fall in the range of 3 to 5% in stable markets, 5 to 8% if the property is significantly under market. Higher adjustments only when the gap is substantial. But remember, if your tenant pays on time, takes care of the home, and reduces turnover costs, sometimes a moderate increase is smarter than pushing for maximum market rent. Turnover costs include cleaning, painting, vacancy time, leasing fees, advertising, and possible repairs. Sometimes keeping a great tenant is more profitable long-term. Let me wrap this up with some common mistakes we see. Raising rent without written notice, trying to increase rent mid-lease, overpricing and creating extended vacancy, using online estimates instead of real comps, raising rent emotionally instead of strategically. The goal isn't to win against your tenant. The goal is sustainable profitability. So here's the bottom line. Yes, Florida landlords can raise rent in 2026. There's no statewide rent control, but timing, notice requirements, lease terms, fair housing compliance, and market conditions all matter. If you haven't watched our video on 2026 rent trends in Orlando yet, I recommend checking that out next. And if you'd like help determining whether a rent increase makes sense for your property, we're here to help. Visit www.managecentralfloridaproperty.com and schedule a free consultation. If this was helpful, give the video a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future updates. I'm David Weber with State Property Management. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.